Hey YouTube, it's Weird Paul. I have sad news today. Last week, my cousin Brian passed away at the age of 43. When we were children, Brian and I would play together at least once a week. We only lived a few minutes' drive from each other, so we'd visit each other's families often. We'd go to birthday parties and picnics together, trick-or-treat at Halloween, and play on the school playground. Here's a picture of us at the Pittsburgh Zoo in the late 70s. I'd always try to get Brian involved in whatever I was doing. I made him a helper at my muscular dystrophy carnival that I never had. I also decided he should have his own club called Brian's Club. Around 1978, I started recording Brian and myself on audio cassettes. I don't remember us ever fighting, but we always teased each other.
Oh, there's a dippy, a dipstick. Oh, and there's a dipstick too. You dippy Winnie.
He would often call me Polly Wally Appleface.
Polly Wally Appleface.
He had some great original comebacks. In 1978, Brian sang this made-up song. Years later, it became one of the earliest Weird Paul songs. In the early 80s, Brian and I spent many days of our summer vacation walking down to the mall. First, we'd stop in the arcade and use whatever quarters we had to play Donkey Kong or maybe whatever the newest game was. Then we'd stop in at the Hills department store. Hills had display models of all the consoles set up, Atari, and Television, ColecoVision, and all the handheld games. We'd take turns playing them sometimes for hours. On the walk back from the mall, we'd talk about stuff like the movies we'd seen. I remember one day Brian told me about the Godzilla movie he'd just watched, and I told him about the movie I'd just seen, Escape from New York. Brian would always get the latest Atari 2600 games before I did, and I remember being at his house playing games like Haunted House and Worm War I. Brian had older sisters, so he would know about music that I'd never heard of. I remember one day in April of 1983, he brought over his tape recorder and played me a song by a singer I'd never heard of. The song? Another One Rides the Bus by Weird Al Yankovic. Brian and I continued to spend a lot of our summer vacation together, but now we had a new game to play, Dungeons and Dragons. I was usually the dungeon master, and I would have Brian take our characters through modules like Castle Amber or some of my homemade dungeons.
Strosky's here on a fine day of days. This is my friend Brian Kirker.
By this time, our family had gotten our video camera, so Brian would sometimes be my cameraman as I did whatever silly things I thought of.
We on? Yeah, we're on. Okay.
Brian was a little camera shy,
Out of here, Paul.
but occasionally I would get him on film. Most of the video footage I have of Brian is from my parents' backyard in June of 1985.
Brian filling up the little kiddie wading pool. You gonna go in it, Brian? What would you give that cannonball, Brian? 1 to a 10. 6? I'd give it a 4.
Once we graduated from high school, Brian and I didn't see each other much. We both had jobs and new friends. I'd still occasionally see Brian at the grocery store where he worked, and we'd talk about a new interest that we both had, anime. One of the last times I saw Brian was at the Shonen Knife concert in 2011. We were both surprised to see each other there, but it was obvious that we still had common interests. I've been thinking about Brian a lot this last week, and I've realized how much everyone influences your life. I still frequently quote those silly things that Brian said when we were kids. I can't tell Brian this now, but I am grateful for all the fun times that we spent together. I can't believe he's gone. Thanks for watching. See you later, YouTube.